الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده حمد الحامدين ونشكره شكر الشاكرين وإن قل مع الحمد حمدنا وإن قل مع الشكر شكرنا ثم الصلاة والتحية والإكرام على الذي بعث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين اللهم صل على آل محمد. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم لما نظر إلى بعض الأطفال: ويل لأولاد آخر الزمان. فقيل: يا رسول الله من آبائهم المشركين؟ قال: لا، من آبائهم المسلمين، لا يعلمونهم شيئا من الفرائض، وإذا تعلموا أولادهم منعوهم ورضوا عنهم بعرض يسير من الدنيا، فأنا منهم براء وهم مني براء. The Holy Prophet was looking at few children in front of him and playing, and he said, how unfortunate are the kids of Akhir al-Zaman. Somebody from these people said that, Ya Rasulullah, is it because of that their parents are unbelievers or disbelievers or mushrikeen? He said, no, their parents are Muslims. Teach any of the basic Islam to their children. Instead, they encourage them to learn or acquaint themselves about material things and no more than that. I am not part of them and they are not part of me. Very stern warning about the situation is in our time. And what the Holy Prophet predicted applies to today exactly. Last night, I tried to wrap up and conclude a chapter or a discussion which was very critical. During Jahiliyyah time, Arab Jahilis never accepted that the mothers have any role to play in the building of the character of a child. The notion, if we see it in our language today, nature part, not the nurture, the nature part. Now we say it's a combination of XY chromosome, both father's contribution and mother's contribution. Arab Jahiliyyah, they did not accept that mothers had any role to play in the child bearing at all, and child rearing was another issue. This is why if you go to the story of the Holy Prophet and Surah Inna A'tainaka al-Kawthar, after the death of his son, they called him Abtar, which means there is no more male from his descendant. The idea that Fatima al-Zahra is his daughter. His daughter, and naturally his Fatima al-Zahra, and she wasn't acceptable. Quran came to reject this concept. And all the ahadith that we have regarding search that we discussed last night and the night before, search for piety, good character, decency, and good morals, spiritual values in life, etc., that was necessary for the mother. It goes well for both, but specifically for the mother, because Islam believes mothers and fathers need to have these unique characters so that they will be able to pass it to the children as they develop and they look after them. I also pointed out that the difficulty we find in finding appropriate match in the Western society. الرجل الصالح أو المرأة الصالحة, they either rare or they don't exist. So when we try to find a match, whether for the boy or for the girl, in this society, we really have to search hard, because there are a variety of reasons, whether it is limited social networking, cultural differences, and others. that makes it very difficult for the characteristics that we need to exist. Even if we were to go back home and bring somebody from back home, unfortunately, globalization has spread the Western values across. You can't make sure that the boy or the girl from wherever we are trying somebody for our children, they are going to be morally acceptable or ethically on the right path, and they wouldn't change after 6 or 7 months. What happened, distortion of the concept of marriage in Islam within the Western media, they have turned it into purely cultural issue. Our children have missed the major point that marriage in Islam primarily is a sunnah, and as such is a spiritual movement, a spiritual journey. You find somebody that you grow together so that she or he will protect half of your deen. He says, so that concept is a way people don't think about it. Now we want to go back to the original question. Let us say, for whatever reason, the nature part, which is the combination of father, mother, is at the moment whether we have succeeded or not succeeded. What about the nurture? And this is something that in the Western academic, they discuss it regarding the bringing of children up. The nature-nurture dynamic. How can we create the right nurture environment? That in the hadith says that when a child is born, كل مولود يولد على الفطرة. Every child that is born on a pure nature. But it's what we call the environment created inside the house by the parents. إلا أن أبواهما. The two parents are the one that could misguide them towards Christianity, towards Judaism, towards some other things, or even rejection of faith completely. So the notion that nurture matters is critical, that we need to address. Now, which we child-bearing part of it, we leave child-rearing part we want to focus upon. To address this, we need to clarify a few points. Number one, in Islam, as well as technological development. But those days, the hadith put it into that context to say you need to go far away. Even if you have to chase knowledge, go after it. No field within Islam, after basic principles of Tawheed, Aqaid, and so on, we see such a rich amount of literature and ahadith existing regarding this children's development and education. That's number one. From Ahlul Bayt, right from starting from the Holy Prophet goes to the end, they all have a hadith about children's education and how to deal with bringing up children. Also, it is a fact that Muslim parents in the Western society face challenges in their life in educating their children, which they want an education that balances religion and scientific or secular education together. Cultural differences, discrimination, Islamophobia, and many, many other factors are creating obstacle for the parents to be able to teach their children, or at least find a system that it works. Many, many years ago, in the early 1980s, a party was established in England called by the name of the Muslim Parliament. It was a political party, but primarily was trying to establish exactly the kind of situations that Muslims are dealing with in the Western society, which was primarily in England. And one of the issues that they researched was how to bring up our children. The effect of what they said, the secular education on the moral principle of our children. One of the concluding report was, for every hour that your child spends in a secular education environment, you need 2 hours to simply clean and cleanse their mind of the poison that they have injected in their mind. Now, if just try basic mathematics, if they spend 8 hours at school, which one of us has 16 hours extra a day that when they come home to sit with the kids and work out? Even the religious schools, they had deficiencies. When I had to deal with my own children and religious schools, there are deficiencies, let alone the secular school. So the fact that parents are having to deal with this crisis, it's not new. And I'll explain in a minute what we mean by West when we talk about how do we bring up our children in the West. This is the third point, which I need to discuss. Before we go on, the word West is used in literature liberally, without clear definition as exactly what it is. West can be used as a location. We come from east and we go west. Or we we live in the west and there are other countries in the east. So it's a location. We have nothing against the location when we talk about teaching children in the West. I'm not talking about the fact that it is the East or the West or the South or the North. I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about West as a state of mind, as an ideology, a way of life that is a critical issue here that we really need to establish. And what we have today, although some of these ideas came from the West, but this ideology through globalization has traveled right across the globe. You consider New Zealand as part of the West, Australia as part of the West, Japan as part of the West, the mentality, and other countries, the secular, Russia as part of the West, China as part of the West. It's a unique ideology that I'm talking about. The West as a location by itself has no issue with it. We have no issue with it. It is the West as an ideology and a way of life that we need to pay attention to. Why? Because it's toxic ideology that, like a parasite, once it gets into the mind, gradually, slowly, step by step, tries to move the previous culture, ideology, way of thinking, moral behavior, and so on out and replace them with its own ideology, moral thinking. So one West is outside of you and you come to stay in it. That's called the location. And one West is trying to live inside of you, which change and wants to get inside and direct your decision. It's a mindset, toxic and pervasive. Once you allow it to get to the children and you don't plan in advance for them, the consequence is all the moral principles that as you want to impart on your children as Muslim children is going to be negated. It is a mindset that once it gets into the mind, gradually removes all the old ideology, all the values, culture, moral principles, way of life, etc., and even God, and replace it with something different. So when we talk about West as an ideology that we have to be paying attention to, it's very critical and damaging to our children, not only to our children, to ourselves as well. This ideology uses technology to spread around. And unfortunately, all of our children, they are using internet, smartphone, Instagram, TV, Facebook, WhatsApp, and the list goes on. These are the ones that this ideology uses to spread around the world, part of the globalization, and gradually it has no limitation for it, and gradually it has a subliminal message that tries to pass to those who watch. You don't notice it, but it's gradual. The children are subjected to this subliminal injection slowly, and sooner or later you will have children that says, at the age of 12, comes home and says, Dad, I don't believe there is God. Because why? Where did this idea come from? I have people that came to my office, parents came and said, Maulana, we have a problem. My son, 12 years old, 13 years old, has come home from school and says, I don't believe that there is God. I don't believe I need to submit to anything. All these moral talks that you have, it's fiction. So I decide what is my morality. And this is what fundamental problem. The moral principle and values and all of this ideology is going to work based on you deciding for yourself what is moral and what is immoral. Your desire, which we talk about nafs al-ammara. So what we have an ideology on one side that tries to center itself on nafs al-ammara and says, you decide, you are free. God is dead, you are the new God. You decide for yourself. And you become the center for philosophy, ideology, moral values, etc., etc. Including even family laws and social laws and everything else, and God and everybody else is out. I decide exactly what is good for me, which sometimes they refer to as some unique utilitarian morality, that your morals and ethical values rests on benefit, physical benefit that you get in your life. If it is beneficial, I'll follow it. If it is not, we go back to nafs al-ammara and desire. If it is beneficial for my desire, I'll follow it. So we have on the one hand, this ideology that is trying to control the mind of these. And we have hadith from various Ahlul Bayt that says, get to them before the corrupting ideologies come and invest or infest their mindset as early as possible. The language may not be the way that we use it today, but these ahadith are trying to present is that you should start understanding the crisis that these people are going to deal with, and their minds will be affected as soon as possible. Islam, on the other hand, is also a universal ideology, a way of life, which we call it deen, based on supremacy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, over self, accountability to Allah, and subjecting desire to the rules of Islam and no compromise. Now we see how do we stand. On one side of the continuum, we have an ideology that says no God, nothing, you decide, nafs al-ammara, desire, you make your own philosophy, you make your own mindset, you make your own moral principles, and on the other, which is flexible. Today I make a moral principle because it's beneficial to me, tomorrow I change it to something else. As we have seen in the past few decades in the West, constantly the moral laws have been changed. And then on the other hand, we have Islam that says, no, the principle is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything has to rest on a supremacy of Allah over everything else. Everything has to rest on that. So, and Islam calls following one's desire as shirk. Ilahuhum hawahum. Their God becomes their desire. They follow it constantly. The one that dictates their life, this is verse in the Holy Quran. The one that dictates their life is the wish, the desire, nafs al-ammara that is in control. So we have two ideologies. One is they are opposite to each other. One calls for God's supremacy of God and everything else accountability to God. On the other hand, the other ideology says supremacy of man. Humans decide for themselves. This is the critical question. Is Islam as a way of life can compete or coexist with such an ideology? No. There is no possibility. We can live in the West, in the location as a West, and we follow our path, the Islamic way. Go back to early history of Islam, the migration to Habasha from Mecca. They traveled from Mecca because they were persecuted to go to Habasha by the command of the Holy Prophet. Under the leadership of Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, they went over there. And they continued doing their things. So they moved from Mecca to Habasha as a location, but they continued to apply the principle and they followed it in their land. The same thing happens. I have no objection in coming. We can certainly coexist with the West as a location, but we will have a clash of ideology as West as an ideology. In Islam, as a way of life, then it will not be possible to live with that ideology that constantly is saying, I am here to destroy all the values that you have. So when we speak about raising children in the West, the real question is how to fight this toxic Western ideology that opposes Islam. Everything else that we see in the West that undermines Muslims and their behavior, etc., is from this particular ideology. What we parents need to come to terms with is ourselves first. Do we really understand this ideology or not? If we do, what did we do to prepare our children and ourselves for it? In most cases, where parents are unable to provide a clear path for their children is because they are not aware, they did not understand this critical toxic ideology that they have to deal with. They simply thought, well, it's a location. I'm moving out of Iraq, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Syria, Lebanon, Iran, somewhere else, as a location, and I'm moving over here as a location. Without realizing that coming over here, I'm exposing myself, my family, and children to totally different things. It's not just the living, the ideology that ultimately is going to corrupt our children. And when we have a hadith from Imam Zain al-Abidin, salawatullah salam alayhi, حق ولدك, book of right. The right of your child over you as parents. إنك مسؤول عما وليته. You have brought him into this world. You are responsible for that child. به من حسن الأدب, the etiquette, أخلاق. والدلالة على ربه. You guide this child towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. والمعونة على طاعته. Not just provide him with lip service. No, you support him. You assist him so that he or she submits to the command of Allah. Can we do that under this circumstance? Where everything outside is there to destroy the deen that Islam is coming in, unless we have some kind of a plan early on. And the earlier we start, if we don't understand the crisis that exists, that we have to deal with, we will not be able to come up with any strategy that deals with our children. We allow them just to go to school and come back home. And if there were some critical questions, we try to respond to them. If we can, if not, we will ask somebody else. Why? Because we really don't understand what's going on outside. In our houses, we have 6 or 7 TVs all around. Kids switch from one to the other. We have all the technologies that this coercive and toxic ideology uses to get in the mind of our children, and we think nothing of it at all. Tomorrow,